Okay, good morning everyone. It's just gone 9:30, so I'll welcome everyone to the Environmental Services Committee meeting for the 15th of April and open the meeting at 9:30. I'd like to welcome Ross Munro from the Pleasant Point Community Board, and I see Jan's just arrived, Finlayson from the Geraldine Community Board. I don't have any apologies that I've been made aware of, but are there any apologies? Councillor Scott is on online today with us.
Okay.
Councillor Burt, welcome Councillor Scott. If there's no apologies, that's easy. Next on the agenda is public forum, which I haven't been made aware of any public forum today. Do we have any identification of items of urgent business today? No, that's good. Hadn't been made aware of any. What about identification of matters of a minor nature? I just have one that I'd like to talk about. So I attended a meeting on the Canterbury Climate Change Partnership Plan yesterday that I thought I'd just give everyone a quick update on. If we could note that to discuss in minor nature, that would be great. Any declarations, conflict of interest? Councillor Scott, did you want to declare a conflict on the paper that we have, given it talks a lot about the district plan?
Yes, sure. Report 8.2, yeah.
Thank you. If we could just note that, that would be great. So I'll just move to item 6.1 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes. I'll just note one correction at item 5 under the declaration of conflicts of interest. It notes Councillor Shannon Scott, which should be Stacey Scott. So if we correct that, are there any other corrections or discussion? If not, would somebody like to move those minutes with that amendment? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Deputy Chair Jackson. Would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Shannon. All in favour, please say aye. Thank you, carried. Item 7.1 on the agenda is the schedule of functions that I have attended. I just want to note there were 3 things that got missed off the bottom there. I'm not sure how, but so on the 19th of March, I attended the Local Water Done Well workshop and the Geraldine Community Board meeting. 22nd of March, I attended the fundraising basketball tournament, and on the 27th of March, I attended a biodiversity on farm visit at the Bonifacios at Milford. So with those additions, I shall move that report if somebody would like to second that. Thank you, Councillor Burt. All in favour? Carried. So we'll just move to 8.1 and I'll ask 8.1, Actions Register Update. So we've just got one action on this, which is the change to the chairperson's report format, which I understand is now in place again across all committees and community boards, so we can just mark that as complete. So if somebody would like to move the recommendation that we receive a note, the actions register. Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Booth seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Now we will move to the one report we have on the agenda today, which is the Resource Management Reform Update, and I'll just ask Mr Hackett to come to the front. Thank you. And we can take the report as read, but you might want to just highlight a few things and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, the report has been prepared to provide the committee with a brief update of the RMA reform work programme. So it touches upon phases 1, 2A and 2B, with phases 1 and 2A being completed and 2B just nearing the end of the select committee phase, and then has been written to provide an update of the direction that the Minister has recently provided in relation to phase 3, which will be the larger structural change to the resource management legislative framework. It takes information out of the announcement from the Minister, but has also taken a high-level look at the working group's report, all 120 pages of it, that was released alongside the Minister's, and provides, I guess, the the framework that will be adopted and will now start going through the parliamentary process. In carrying out that assessment, I've touched upon at a high level the impacts on Timaru District Council as a council, and more specifically where we are at with our current work program around the district plan review. Have pulled what I thought were some relevant questions and tried to answer those through the body of the report. So yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bowen.
And feel free to decline to answer because I might be asking more for opinion, but what's your thinking on the wider context of the RM reform to local government and regional council? Because I think there's certainly a view from, regional council that, hey, at a point in time, probably quite soon, and this could move quite quickly, that they're going to look, significantly different. So is that sort of what you're getting through, or feel free to decline, because it is probably a question I shouldn't ask.
Recognising it's my professional viewpoint, I think, and through you, Madam Chair, yes, I think the system will look very different. I don't think it's too dissimilar to the system that was put forward by the previous government and had been enacted through legislation. However, I see some benefits in the system as proposed, in that I believe district councils like ourselves will retain a bit more of a voice within the new system compared to the system that had previously been put forward. But I also see possibly a watering down of some of the responsibilities that currently sit with regional councils, insofar as it is looking towards standardising some of those more environmental type considerations around water allocation and the like, and actually goes as far as suggesting some of that may be monetised moving forward, which I think is quite a drastic shift, and will be interesting to see how that plays out through the legislation and the impact that would have on a regional council specifically, but also the watering down of a district council's ability to have really specific zonings and the like, and moving towards that more nationally regulated zone framework. So I think it says 13 in this report, you're picking your zoning based on those 13 rather than, I think the Minister was quoted as saying there's something like 600 unique zones throughout the country currently. So yes, it will change things drastically, but encouraging, I believe, that at a local level there's within the process.
Yeah, cool. And I think Canterbury-wise, there's 87 zones or something. So, just on that one point, before you get into there's pros and cons with that, isn't it? Standardisation to me sort of makes sense, but what's the alternative to that? There's some pros, but what are the cons if we can't dial down and get a specific zones for a region? Just going to put people through a more arduous process potentially around resource consenting, or hard to know?
I think the intent of the reform is very much to make resource consenting not arduous, and I wonder if it's more heading, and I hate to use building consent process as an example when it's going through a reform as well, but it's a bit more standardised in that you've got your solutions and the like, and when you're checking it, it's going back to those kind of nationalised standards. And I think that's my interpretation is where this is going, is that you still will need resource consents in some instances, but what you're considering will be a much narrower focus and will take some of the flack that planners get around going outside of the box too much, or considering some of those issues which are more at a NIMBYism or not in my backyard type level, and evaluating those, and it will be far more structured that if it goes through the height, this is what you will consider full stop, and you're very narrow in how you're doing it. So not a tick box process, but heading more towards a tick box process through that standardisation would be my guess of where this is heading.
Thanks. I guess I'm always a wee bit confused about lots of things, to be fair, but in terms of the rapid government change, we're putting a lot of time, effort and money into this, and I know we probably don't want to pause it, but I can see the benefits in pausing it, because we'll go through it and then there may be legislative changes that wipe out what we've just done. So, I mean, it's a light touch here, but what would the benefits be in pausing it? Because I just want to tease that out. I'm not saying we do that, but if you know what I mean, we'll go through this, agree to everything, government changes 3 things this year, 3 next year, that will have a major impact on the plan.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The report looks at a high level at 3 options, and pausing is one of those. And I think with pausing, the immediate benefit to council would be the saving of dollars and time in relation to progressing the review as it stands currently. But in pausing it, it will give you more time, or us more time to understand what the future legislative framework looks like. But on the converse, doesn't give us an outcome per se, and that if we decide to progress, we've shortened and truncated the time frame in which we can progress it, and then the cost will still be there at a future time. So yeah, in short, the benefit would be a cost and time saving at this time, but would create further uncertainty around whether we need to pick that up and carry it on, and loss of momentum and where we're at and the like. So the pause is kind of hedging your bets to a certain degree, and waiting, because until that process the select committee process and the legislation is introduced to the Parliament, all we have is the high level document, and I'm guessing the legislation will look quite different. Well, all legislation does compared to a discussion type document like this.
I guess that's my point in some ways, though, is we'll get legislation, so we get the proposed district plan and we get the red pen out and go, that's out, that's out, that's out. So how much time and effort are we putting into things that are likely to change?
And I guess where we're at now is that the time and effort has largely already gone into the process. So we have notified the plan. We are now through to our next hearings in 2 weeks, which will mean we've effectively heard the submissions on the entire plan, with only 2 hearings to follow, one being the growth-specific hearing and financial contributions. So growth is looking at those submitters that have sought rezonings, so it isn't looking at any of the nuts and bolts of the provisions there. So there's that element, and then it's looking at the financial contributions, which are quite important to council as they do provide an income stream as well. And then following that, there's the last hearing, which is really the sweep up for any final questions from the panel and the decisions issued. So we're 80 to 90% through the work program, can expect decisions following that, which will then allow for that proposed plan to have more legal effect than it currently does, and have a decisions version of that, which would put council in a strong position versus if we were to pause, we're stuck with the operative plan and some parts of the proposed plan which have got immediate legal effect, which has been causing some issues for some people around some of those immediate legal effects, which has then been heard and hopefully resolved through the hearing process. So actually finishing the process would likely have some benefits for the community and give them greater certainty before heading into the reform, because the direction within the EAG report, the expert advisory group, is that councils who are in positions like Timaru should continue and finish the process, and then that plan will then be interpreted and applied under the new legislation, and then the changes won't follow through until the spatial planning and the like has been carried out. So whilst the government says it's going to be hard and fast in bringing that new legislation in, going through an extensive spatial planning process Canterbury-wide could take years as well. So by pausing, we could end up in this no man's land for potentially up to, and I'm saying potentially 5 years, with a plan that we've potentially got one on hold, or we're going right back to the original one. So my view is that there would be benefit in finishing the plan, because it would create greater certainty, and it would realise the investment that councils put into this process. Whilst on paper the cost of finishing it may look high, when you were to look at that as a percentage of the project as a whole, it's likely relatively small as a percentage of what council's already invested to this time.
Thanks, that all made sense, but that was better than just what's paper in front. We have an understanding that we're 80 to 90% through. And thank you.
Thank you. I think Mr Cooper's just going to add something, but I do want to reiterate that also in the government report, it's if you're in this process and already started, you should continue and finish, because I had the same questions.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. I just wanted to say it's not only north of 10 million or whatever, wherever we're at now for council investment. There's significant investment from particular parties out in the community as well. So I think we're almost obliged to finish it, or certainly factor that thinking in, because there's probably collectively millions of dollars gone into it from those parties as well that have taken part in the process to try and shape the new plan. And we are within spitting distance of it, so to speak. Yeah.
Can I ask, I'd like to ask two questions as CE. One is, how much is it going to cost to finish it? And the second question is which plan is more enabling, the operative plan or our new proposed plan?
Let Mr Cooper answer that, but just before, I also want to reiterate the point Mr Hackett made, and we're in between, and we've got the operative plus we've got the legally binding parts of the new plan, which is causing grief for some.
Yeah, I mean, Mr Hackett's across the budget as much as I can probably speak to that, but I think we're circa 1.4 million to go. Is that about right, Aaron?
Yes. So next financial year within the annual plan, 900,000's been budgeted for the completion of the two hearings, and that will give some seed funding for responding to any appeals that we receive, but the quantum of the appeals make it, without knowing that, it's pretty hard to budget for what they may look like. And then I guess for the remainder of this financial year, we're looking at, probably about another 500,000, which will take us to about 2.3 for this year, which is about $1 million less than what we had budgeted in this financial year. So there has been efficiencies found through the process. All the hearings have been less days than what we had budgeted for and the like. So I guess overall we're looking at probably about early 3 millions for the running of the hearings process to get the decisions issued, which is on about what the budget within the year 1 and 2 of the LTP was. But that's just from a spend off internally, and doesn't recognise Mr Cooper's point around what the submitters are investing in the process as well. Having legal representation and planning representation at hearings is not cheap for anybody.
Mr Hurt, just on the, you talked about appeals, and so at point 14 you've said the recommendation would mean that the plan would be deemed a district plan under new acts if completed. So what does completed mean? Is that when we publish it, or is that at the end of the appeal process? And what is the risk that it isn't completed in time because of the appeals?
Yes, so as you go through through you, Madam Chair, as you go through the district plan review process, there's different milestones in relation to your proposed plan and how much has immediate legal effect versus your current operative plan. So when the decisions version's issued, that has more effect than the proposed version, and then there's the appeals. And so the plan process isn't finished until all the appeals are resolved and it comes back to council for ratification. But large parts of it will, for all intents and purposes, be completed on the issuing of decision if no appeals are received on those matters.
Thank you. I have a number of other questions. I don't see any others around the room, so I'll try and fire through them quickly. One not technically related to this committee, but I thought was worth asking. You note that a streamlined process will be introduced which will enable councils and the minister to list and delist heritage buildings in the district plan. So I read the government report, but I didn't read the 400 EAG report. Is there any flavour in there of what that might look like? And I ask because, and I'm not suggesting we knock the theatre down, but I'm wondering if it didn't have that heritage listing, if the remodelling of it would all of a sudden become easier for us.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The streamline process still requires quite a lengthy process, and it's more about council going to the minister and saying we don't want to go through that standard, what I term Schedule 1 process, which we're currently using for our district plan review. You could go and take a proposal and say we want to skip a couple of steps because we've done all this consultation and if we do this, we don't want appeals. So I don't think it would be that helpful with where we're at. I do note in the EAG report, it actually identifies that moving forward, the recommendation is that councils no longer manage heritage buildings and that go back to Heritage New Zealand as a function, which will be an interesting concept because lots of councils, ourselves included, have heritage buildings listed in our district plan which aren't protected under the Heritage New Zealand Act. And so there will be potentially, if that changes to come through in legislation, a number of buildings which are currently protected by our district plan would no longer be afforded protection under that other legislation. Not that that captures the Theatre Royal.
Thank you. My next question is about 11.6 and the greater use of standardisation. So what does that mean for the work that we're doing in the PD, in the proposed district plan on the SASMs, the outstanding natural landscapes and the SNAs? Because my understanding is as a district we can still say these are those areas, the significant natural areas and that, but it'll be government that says these are the rules, and that has been a lot of our work in the district plan. So do you kind of envisage all of that work we've done just specific to those zones will get turfed?
Through you, Madam Chair, no, I don't anticipate that. So when the government or the report talks about nationally set zoning, I think that relates to your standard residential and rural type zonings, and it then talks about the overlays such as outstanding natural landscapes or SASMs, and that they will then largely become regionalised functions because they're quite linked to the environmental nature rather than the built form. And to answer your question in relation to the work that's been done to date being lost, I don't think that would be the case either. It's a pretty prescriptive set of standards and methodology that's used in coming up with these layers, done by quite a small group of professionals within the South Island in particular, and that's been quite standardised across Canterbury through the use of some of those professionals and with support from Environment Canterbury. So as a starting point, I'd imagine most of those overlays have been mapped within that same methodology, and it would only be if the government directed a change in that methodology that I would think they'd change significantly.
Thank you. Then 11.7 with the spatial plan. My question is, what does that mean for the FDAs and the money that we're spending on the likes of the Callans Hill, the Old North Road FDAs? Like, are we going to see that all of a sudden a whole lot easier, or not?
Yeah, great question. The intent of the government is to make that type of rezoning a lot easier, but with that comes a number of risks, in my view, for council insofar as the spatial planning as provided direction within this EAG talks about the spatial plan is actually going to be the driver for long-term plans and 30-year infrastructure strategies and the like. So at the moment, with the FDAs, we're doing that work before introducing it into the district plan so that we can understand the implications of that from an infrastructure and financing perspective. This may flip that on the head and introduce the ability of this zoning to come through before that work's been done. So I think it's going to place a greater emphasis on councils to be fully aware of where growth's occurring and have plans within your infrastructure strategies and long-term plans to fund and provide that support for that growth, because the pathway through is intended to be a lot more straightforward than the FDA process is perceived to be.
So I guess my underlying question to that is the work we're doing there, should we continue with that work given the cost of it, or should we consider pausing it because it might become a whole lot easier in the end, or will we need all of that information that we're doing through those reports anyway?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding is those reports are largely finalised, so are sitting there available to inform a future planning process, whatever that may look like. So we now have a good understanding of the infrastructure requirements and what that's going to take from a network perspective and the costs that are going to be associated with that. The next steps for council would be, if we're to stick with the current legislative framework, we'd have to go through a type process to implement that anyway. So I guess council's in a strong position in relation to those pieces of land, and that we understand the implications from an infrastructure type. So if it gets pushed through a future spatial planning exercise, we're well informed and know what we're dealing with. So I think that works will be valuable to have. It just becomes a matter of council understanding and making a choice moving forward as to how it may be implemented and brought to reality within a framework.
Actually, much answered my other questions, but I did just note one down when you were talking before about the new changes contemplate charging for resources in over-allocated areas, and obviously I've considered that greatly with my personal farming hat on, but I never actually considered it from a council point of view, and potentially we could see council having to pay for the water for our town supply. Is that your understanding of what it says?
At a very high level, yes. Not overly nuanced, apologies, with how the Environment Canterbury allocate resources at the moment, but reading at a high level within that report, it talks about effectively potentially moving to a buying shares of water, and council does have and need to take water from some of these catchments for our municipal supplies. So I think it will be important for council to keep a very close eye on where the legislation heads in that direction, alongside other changes in relation to standardising wastewater discharges and all that type of stuff that seems to be coming through the legislation as it stands.
Thank you. Any other questions from Councillor Shannon?
Thank you. There's a lot in here, obviously, about the spatial planning, and from what I'm hearing, we're in a place where we have, of sorts, a spatial plan for the district anyway, or will have by the end of this the DP process. Does moving through to the reforms actually end up kicking off another expensive process for us, where we may see the likes of some relitigation and what have you from out with the community and the likes, that some decisions made didn't necessarily meet the new regulations, and are we looking at an increased workload for you and the team?
Thank you, and through the chair, the planning team is going to be busy moving forward, I guess. That spatial planning concept, because it's looking at being regionalised, is interesting. As a council, we will definitely need to put resources in around the table to make sure we've got our voice heard. And my reading is it's probably going to go beyond a bit beyond what councils have traditionally called spatial planning, around largely focusing on an urban environment, how that goes. I think there's scope within what they're talking about to actually start identifying areas. If you're going to have a solar farm area within Christchurch, wider Canterbury, it might start looking at piecing all that together, so it's not just about your urban areas. So I think it's going to open the box of worms for some costs. There will be potentially some litigation as part of that through a hearing process, but I do note that the recommendations is that once it's gone through that hearing process, there's no opportunity to appeal that to the Environment Court, which will reduce costs and angst moving through as well, because quite often the excessive costs can be gained at the time of Environment Court. So being able to avoid that will hopefully mean that the whole process is a bit more streamlined. But yes, as the legislation evolves, it will be important to look at what resources council will need to allocate moving forward.
Thank you. Just checking, Councillor Scott, you don't have any questions?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bowen.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, just one point on that. It is a work stream of the mayoral forum around that wider Canterbury spatial planning, because Greater Christchurch has done all that work, I believe, and it does also feed into what government expects around regional deals. The wider spatial planning is required, from what I understand. Yeah.
Thank you. So I just kind of want to make it clear, because there's a bit of community interest in this, and not only in our community, but what I've also seen in the Mackenzie community where they're in a similar process. This paper is not recommending anything, it's just a receive and note. So effectively that means we're carrying on as normal, which is recommended in the government report and the EAG report. And I just wanted to make sure that if anyone in the room thinks we should be doing anything other than that, we'll need to request a paper on that, won't we? But it's, from this paper clear that the preferred option is just to carry on and finish the district plan because there's benefits for us in that. Have I summed that up correctly?
The intent of the paper, and through you, Madam Chair, was to provide a high-level framework, and if Council wished for me to go away and come back with a decision report, I would likely look to include some more detail around the costs and the likes, and possibly gain some feedback from some submitters who have been heavily involved around their costs so that Council could make an informed decision. But the initial, I guess, summary within this report is that based on where we're at as a Council, my view would be there's benefit in finishing the process to realise the investment that's already been put in. If we were at the stage of having just notified a plan, I think this would be a completely different discussion, but because after 2 weeks, we're going to be effectively 2 or 3 days worth of hearings away from having finalised it and being able to issue decisions. We're very close to realising that investment return through this process.
Thank you, and I'm not suggesting we do that for a moment, come back with a paper to make a decision, but I just want to make sure that everybody else in the room is of the same view. Thank you. So with that, if there's no further questions, I'll move the recommendation that we receive and note the resource management reform update, and thank you, Mr. Hackart, for providing that. It's important that Council are aware of what's coming at us. Can I ask for a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Hackart. So just one last thing on the agenda is the minor nature item that I was going to raise. So yesterday, as we've had reported to this committee previously, the Canterbury Climate Change Partnership Plan has been adopted. So I was part of a reference group that was like a governance group overseeing the development of that plan. And so yesterday we just had an update on where that group sits now. So initially it was suggested that the group may need to carry on in some way, shape or form to monitor progress against the plan. However, the Mayoral Forum, rightly so, have decided that needs to sit with the Mayoral Forum, so they've got accountability for progress on the plan and also budget. So the discussion yesterday was to continue with this group, and they would act as champions, which is kind of in line with the biodiversity group that has champions within each council for the biodiversity plan. So that is now my role, which some of you may find ironic. But I'm quite keen to get an update at some point in the future on, one, that plan, and so it's just, these are the actions, how does it benefit this council, what part do we play in that, and what outcomes we'll see. But I'm also keen to get an update at some point on the actions that we agreed on that we would prioritise out of the draft climate change strategy that we've had presented to this committee in the past. But we are kind of hoping, I spoke to Mr Cooper yesterday, and perhaps later in the year we might be able to get that due to a few issues, but that is definitely on my radar. That is all. Any other discussion? Nothing from Councillor Scott. Okay, with that I shall close the meeting at 10:03. Thank you everyone for your attendance.
Koto, good morning and welcome to the Infrastructure Committee. I'd like to welcome Ross from Pleasant Point and Jan from Jureen. Thank you for attending. We do not have any apologies today. We do have a public forum. I'd like to welcome Ian Sinclair, Bruce Robinson and David Thompson. Welcome. Thank you for attending. So we're going to give you guys 20 minutes, whether you want to use 15 for presentation and 5 for questions or 10 and 10, leave it up to you. But we welcome you and the floor's yours.
Thanks for that. Is that all good volume-wise? Sweet. Welcome to you to our presentation. It's good of you to take the time and talk to us today. We have a handout that we will give to you after we've talked, so pretty much what we're talking to today will be covered in that. You have been introduced. Bruce on my left. Do you want to introduce yourself, Bruce?
Yes, Bruce Robertson. Bruce Robertson, owner of Avtech. I've been travelling back and forth to the airport for the last 50 years this year, so I know the piece of land out there very well. I've owned and operated Avtech since 1987 and been involved in leases at the airport since 1983. So, thank you.
And my name is David Thompson, and we're just a hangar owner at the airport. It's for recreational use only.
Thanks, and my name's Ian Sinclair, and I'm also a land lease holder at the airport. I have a hangar and a recreational aircraft and a few buddies in my hangar. We represent all of the hangar owners that are private land leaseholders at the airport. I think your meeting documentation on the 18th of February talked about 21 leases or buildings at the hangar or whatever. 18 of those we represent. There's also 3 sites that are clubs or societies, and they've been speaking separately for themselves, but we're in dialogue with them. We have commissioned an independent land and land lease review. Unfortunately, our valuer got called into a hearing where they had to spend 2 days. One of those days was the day they were coming to view the land at Timaru Airport, which is what he's valuing. We believe he'll get that done after Easter. He's visiting the second working day after Easter, and then he'll need some time to prepare that. So we'll come and talk to you guys, not necessarily in this forum, but at some level once we get that. At the end of today's presentation, you could think that there's bugger all point in us being here today to talk to you without a valuation, but there are more issues on the table than you discussed at your previous infrastructure meeting, and we'd like to raise some of those. And we're also going to offer some motions or things that you could consider to pass, which we think would move the airport forward. We think it's quite important that you give those due consideration. After your 18th of February meeting, I think there was a directive to not really engage with people and just to ask for that valuation. We think engagement's important, and we think talking about some of those things will render good results. We have chosen to present in person rather than in the media. There was fairly negative outcomes for you guys from the 18th meeting. I don't think it really increased your mana or did you much good, especially in the pilot community, and I think that could have been dealt with quite differently by engaging with us rather than doing what eventually happened. We did send an open letter, and we do thank those members that chose to meet with us. That was most useful because I think we're a very small community. The airport's not well understood by most members of the public, and it was useful to talk to councillors, and we stand behind the information in that letter. We don't intend to re-mitigate all the points there today. There'll be a few things that'll be similar, but we will supply a copy of that to you today in case you've lost it. One of the things that we will talk about from that meeting, and I'll get David to jump in, is the fact that there was discussion around the fact that leases weren't market value and weren't having reviews, and this is absolutely not true. So David, do you want to have a bit of a chat about your situation out there?
Yeah, sure. So I can speak to our own personal situation. We go back to 2006, there was a valuation done by the council, and the square metre rate was set for recreational use at $1.55 per square metre, including GST. Interestingly enough, in 2006 our contract began, and that's when the hangar was built, and we were started off at $2.31 per square metre, including GST, somewhat higher than the valuation. During the ensuing period, right up till 2022, we had various incremental increases which we carried on with even when the contract had lapsed. We carried on with paying the increases, and we had a 37% increase during that period. CPI run for the same period at 40%. So we weren't too far away from the CPI rates. The interesting thing is that that brought us to $14.42 per annum, which is very similar to, in line with, say, Rangitata huts or other secular recreational usage of properties. And with the latest announcement and the latest bill I've received, I've had a 1,375% increase, taking us to $21,217 a year for our hangar of 400 square metres. That is untenable. Mr. Binney's valuation at Washdyke, he talked about commercial rates. It's not commercial, and we'll go on to explain that. And it never has been commercial. And there's been some earlier notes in the various valuations done in earlier years showing quite clearly that it was for recreational use and not for commercial use. Even at Mr. Binney's valuations at Washdyke, for instance, of sale prices between $143 and $398 per square metre, if you capitalise that out at 5.25% return, that's only ranging between $7.50 and $19.84. Now, your group manager in one of the meetings stated that at $15 we're at the lower end. Even on that commercial rate, no, we're not. We're more at the higher end, where you're trying to impose a more higher rate at the higher end at $15. So we don't really agree with everything that's been said thus far.
Thanks, David. These issues at the airport have been talked about for a long time. Previous councils have, I don't know what process used, but set directives, I'll call it, for land lease rates with consideration to their private and recreational use. So going back to a previous LTP period, and I can't remember what year it was, but I sat in this chamber with a different set of councillors, a different set of executive officers, and we talked about the fact that most of the hangars at the airport were for private and recreational use. And the lease rates from that point of time were reassessed to reflect that usage, and I ended up with a new lease and market rate, and that's been in place ever since. So really the point is that we're talking about stuff that has been presented in the past. From our point of view, and your most recent plan, this will sound a bit like deja vu, but from our point of view, the airport is our Ashby Park, it's our Rangitata huts, and it's our gun club. And strangely enough, the gun club is on the airport land and enjoys club levels of charges which we don't enjoy. And we're not actually asking for that, we're just asking for a fair deal. We don't want to be on your club rate of paying for things. The airport at Richard Pearse Airport is under the 1959 page 488, it's gazetted as an aerodrome and it's Crown land, that's its status, its underlying status. On your district plan it shows up as Rural 1 and General Rural under the new plan which you're just adopting. So that means basically that for the non-operational part of the airport, it's treated with Rural 1 rules. The operational area of the airport, which we'll talk about shortly, is quite small in the whole scheme of things out there, and all of that other land is actually leased to farmers. So we'll just talk about some things to do with leases. Leases are restricted, and I'll just quote out of the most recent lease, which was sent to Dave Crosby. So the restriction is, as a hangar site for aircraft for personal and private use / leaseor approved commercial uses, which the landlord may determine in its absolute discretion. And even the likes of Bruce, even though he is running a business to support general aviation, he can't paint cars, he can't store vehicles, there's lots of things that he can't do. He's restricted to aircraft uses. So we're not Washdyke. We're not in Washdyke. We can't run the businesses that are there. Leases at the airport specifically exclude residential use. This is a huge missed opportunity for council, and it's been discussed in previous councils to the extent of almost getting to a development stage, but it's a huge missed opportunity. The lease document is still not fit for purpose. We we watched your meeting because it was recorded in a public forum on the 18th of February, and your executive declared that the lease template was final and fit for purpose. That is still not true. I looked at the lease, we've got a document reference number here, but once again, it's Dave's lease. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 points on that need tidying up. Just to give you a bit of a feel for the kind of things that are there, there are clauses in there that talk about 20 working days for things to be accepted by default. Bearing in mind that we're recreational landowners and people have lives, 20 working days seems a bit short. If you put something in a post box or notify someone, the chances are they could be away getting on with another part of their life, and the way the lease is written, that automatically is an acceptance. There's a clause that talks about a local valuer requirement with 7 years of local experience. Well, I think we've seen quite adequately that a local valuer's local experience is not necessarily good for airports, because we would certainly contend that Mr. Binney's valuation is not business-like. Market reviews, by definition, can go up or down. There's a clause in the lease that says market reviews can only ever go up. Well, if we're going to talk about market reviews, let's actually let them go both ways. There's a clause about electronic devices that are being used on the airport, but there's no schedule of which devices are acceptable. So, once again, it's one of those things that probably shouldn't be there. I think, bearing in mind the small size of the community, notifications under the lease could be by mail, but they also could be by email, and they could also be a phone call. I mean, I know when I talk to my tenants about changes, I ring them up and talk to them. It's not rocket science. So the other three big things really, and we'll talk about these more, is that we think if the airport's going to succeed and into the future, leases need to be offered with a tenure of 30 years. Nobody's going to build a hangar out at the airport when you're offering 5 years with 5 years rate of renewal, or even 5 years with 2 terms of 5 years. It's just not long enough. People are investing literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets to use for their recreation and to store their aircraft. And if you can't offer decent tenures, then people will have no confidence to build there, and the airport won't develop. Market reviews, there was discussion at the meeting the other day that the standard market reviews are every 2 years. That's just not true. Most people have 5 years, and we think that that should be stated out as well, and we'll talk about that later. The other thing that's a huge problem, and it's part of why David's lease has gone to $22,000, is the method of calculating leases at the airport varies from being pure building footprint to footprint plus some surrounding land to surrounding land. And in my case, I get charged a lease on a footprint, but my rates are based on a land plot, which I don't even have tenure of. So, you know, I think there needs to be a good hard look at the whole overall system of how you think about producing leases, the policies behind them, and how they're put out into the public arena. And if you don't do that, I really don't think there's going to be too many people pick up hangers, especially with the kind of thing that's happened. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is good faith negotiations. David has been trying to get a fit for purpose lease for 4 years. 4 years. And so suddenly we have a resolution in council which means that all offers and discussions during that period of time have just been washed away. Now, we actually think that you guys need to, in good faith, carry on with those offers. In David's case, he's paying the new lease value that he was asked to do 3 and a bit years ago. 2022, and has been paying that new amount. So he accepted that the position that you put forward with a valuation or however you arrived at that value, and he's been faithfully paying that. What he hasn't been able to accept is the clauses on the lease, and I think we've been justified because the lease has gone from a 49-page document and it's now approaching, I think, 16 pages. There are leases at the airport that are just 2 pages, and they were...
Mr Sinclair, just let you know you've got 15 minutes, so you've got 5 minutes remaining.
That's fine. Previous valuations for market value have never attempted to imply commercial or industrial use.
I'd just like to speak to that for a moment. I want to just, because time is short, I want to read to you a quotation from an earlier valuation by one of your registered valuers. And it says, the reason for reducing the rates compared to, say, commercial or other areas of rate of costs is the small size and regional nature of the airport, the likelihood of minimal demand for airport land for alternative uses apart from airport-related uses such as hangar sites or other aviation-related businesses, the airport's lack of profile and industrial infrastructure which limits the appeal of the airport land for alternative uses, the likelihood of restrictions on particular land uses by the airport authority, which also limits the attractiveness of land at Richard Pearse Airport for alternative uses, the lower value of the land resulting as a consequence of the above factors. So that was a quote, direct quotation from one of your earlier valuations. I think you need to take those quotations on board when applying the current valuations.
And I think the other thing we've got to look at, the other airports that are similar to Timaru, Rangiora, for example, Ashburton, our airport is a ghost airport compared to those airports. And the tenants on Timaru's airport, every single one of us are over 60. We're obviously going to be wanting to unload those buildings. We won't be able to sell the buildings with a hook around the neck, 96,000 a year to pay to the council when one of my buildings is not even hardly worth that. So I think we've got to really look ahead and what we can do to get Timaru Airport up and running, because sadly you drive through Stafford Street, it's dead. Mr Binney has recorded that he's used commercial properties at Washdyke. Just drive down Hilton Highway, there are 7 properties on the left-hand side of Hilton Highway that are empty. So is that telling you that the prices to be in those buildings is too high? I think we just need to have a real wake-up call. We want to see Timaru Airport go ahead, and as a group we're willing to help. And I know in the past I've been part of airport working groups with previous councils, and we've sat around and had logical discussions and made it all work. I did that with a previous manager. We've got figures here that I agreed to. The only reason I didn't hand the document in at the time was that I didn't like the insurance clauses that were in the 49-page document, so I didn't bring it into the council. Now, those figures we agreed to and we were quite happy with, but I think Nigel beside me has actually said that let's get that valuation, we'll sit down and talk. We're prepared to do that, but we're miles apart at $15 a square metre. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. This is a very complex matter and compressing the time is difficult, so we're going to give you this handout, which is reasonably detailed. I'm just going to give you some quick bullet points. Mr Binney's valuation, we believe, is deeply flawed. We're seeking our own valuation, and you'll have that in due course. We're not really sure why you are employing external valuers, because you hold values supplied by QV for the airport land sites in your own records inside council. Seems to be a bit of a crazy thing. The area that's on your plan, which is about 6.5 hectares at the airport, if you look at the values for, say, my hangar site and apply that to the whole 6.5 hectares where the hangars live, is currently paying 269% more. The leases are paying 269% more than a fair rate of return, 5.5% on that value of land. Overall at the airport, we occupy 3% of the land area and pay 17.6% of the lease income. We pay 442% more for our area of land, that's the whole 6.5 hectares, and than you get from the farm. All leaseholders pay rates. I was going to ask you to define private benefit, but I'm not going to waste my time on that because I think I know what it means. And I want to skip on to operational costs. I've just circulated a budget. There was a budget that was presented to your meeting. We think that that budget did not represent fairly the costs that associate with our use at the airport. I've added an extra column, which is the right-hand side, put in percentages that we think would be fairer, and the result of that is that we believe we are paying, through our leases, 78% of the operating cost that relates to us. We completely reject the fact that we should be paying in the operational budgets interest and depreciation on expensive assets that council has put into service airlines. We don't need that infrastructure, it's not there for us, and it does beg the question what happens when the airline stops coming. Market rate for land leases or user pays, pick a line. In your meeting the other day, you talked about market reviews and market rates, but you also talked about user pays. So which one is it? Just choose which one you're going, because either way, we're actually already there. So, summary. We are paying a fair rate for leased land at the airport already. We have had CPI increases and market reviews. We understand council has budgeting problems, but they are not due to expenses incurred on behalf of landowners. General rates are not subsidising our land leases. We are meeting your requirements for private benefit, even without knowing what that is, or user pays. Many airports are charging land lease rates that are not sustainable. In the past, Wanaka Airport has stated that it does not want private hangars by 2030, and it's pricing them out. That's why its prices are high. It does not want them there. Queenstown's already been through this process. Timaru is not Wanaka, and it's not Queenstown. 2/3 of the hangar owners at Timaru have stated that they will remove their hangars from the airport if $15 is applied to their land leases. Most hangars can be removed and re-erected easily. They're Meccano kit sets. No new hangars will be built at Timaru. Ashburton and other airfields are significantly cheaper than your proposed rates. New hangars will be built on private land or at more affordable airfields. Council has been misled thinking there is an untapped value in airport land leases. They are at market rates now. And I'd just like to finish by saying that increasing airport revenue from land leases depends on long lease tenures, fair lease values, a transparent future pricing policy, a functional airport plan, and functional airport management. And the last thing that's in our page, and I'll let you read this, is we've offered 3 resolutions. One is to do with good faith and your decision of the 18th meeting. The other one is to set some policy, because clearly there's no policy at the airport for how leases are constructed, their tenure, the method of calculation, and how the market rate easily equates to accessible values like QV. And the third one is we have been offering for some time to work cooperatively, as Bruce talked about in the past, with the council to make the airport a better place. and we have made no progress on that whatsoever. I'd just like to end by saying that we're all volunteers. We spend time doing this stuff because we're passionate. I think if we were doing a show of hands, pretty much everyone else in this room gets paid to do this stuff. We do it because we love it. We like the airport. We want it to succeed. But, man, you guys make it hard. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, Bruce, David. We welcome your evaluation and we look forward to future engagement. And we'll come back at point 11 for further consideration if there's any through this meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Identifications of items of an urgent business. I have not been made aware of any. Identifications of matters of a minor nature. Lovely. Any conflicts of interest to be noted, please? Okay, we're going to go to the confirmation of the minutes on 6.1. So the minutes from the 18th of February 2025. Take these as read. Thank you, Mayor Bond. Move. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Burt. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Schedules that I've attended since our last meeting. I'm happy to remove my report. There's no update required. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. All those in favour? Aye. Carried. We move on to our first of our reports, which is 8.1 on page 18. And it is the Action Register update. So we'll go through these one by one. The first one is the update on Peel Forest landfill. So the contract has been let, and officers are asking if this action can now be closed. Is there any... Yes, Councillor Pye?
Sorry, I just have a question about process around that. Obviously not everyone around this table is on tenders and procurement, and then I saw a report at the last Jordan Community Board that talked about the letting of the contract, but the full council hadn't actually been made aware of that, and I just wondered if we can have a better system in future so that full council are made aware of contracts that have been let through tenders and procurement.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's not a system that we have used in the past, but I do take your point. Yeah, usually the meetings are public in a lot of cases. I'm not sure if Peel Forest one was in this situation, but yeah, you know, the minutes should be made available to all councillors. Yeah, but Tenders and Procurement Committee do have the delegation to make the decision.
I wasn't worried about the decision or anything like that. I was just surprised to read the paper in the Jordan Community Board when the rest of council had. I wasn't aware that that had been made public until I saw it in the Community Board papers. That was all. But thank you.
I guess because of the size and what's happening there, if we take it off this, how are we going to get regular reports? Because I want updates of how we're going, how it's being progressed. And I think by leaving it there, just reminds us.
It should come as a project update. You know how we get those project updates
Okay.
on the water rules?
Yep, but just as long as it does so.
It will come through there.
Through some process.
We'd commit to a quarterly project update. Yeah.
Lovely. Okay. And then the second one is the report on reductions of walking, cycling and road safety programs. I'm not sure if Susie, do you want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, so as in the action register, that's all been included in the annual plan process and through the various workshops that we've had, and I've presented the options on reducing budgets in certain areas. So hoping we can close that one off, but if you've got any questions, feel free to sing out.
Any questions for Susie?
I think in our workshop on the annual plan, we do need to talk about some of these things. So our spend on some of these is actually a lot more than NZTA give us. And if you go on the assumption that you do a one-for-one match, then there's some decisions need to be made. While it's in the annual plan stuff, that's where we need to talk that through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out too, there is additional funding of $200,000 for new cycleways, which hasn't been included in this.
How much did you say, 2,000? Oh, yes.
Not on this particular point, but I just had another thing before you move and carry the report.
Any further discussions regarding the reductions of funding here? Okay, Councillor Pye.
So at that same tenders and procurement meeting, we requested a report that my understanding was going to come to this committee, but I don't see that report, and I wondered, was that the understanding, or and you know, that was on what tenders have been let and the budget, the full budget, a little bit like the project reports that come here, but what we never see is the tender that's been accepted versus the costs against that particular tender. We only ever see them as a budget, so that we could see whether the lowest tender actually ends up being the lowest tender, and then what's coming up to be tendered in the near future. And I thought that was going to come to this committee, that report, as a kind of a standing report, but I don't see it here. And does it need to be added to the action register for this committee? Do you remember? I
think it was back to tenders.
What?
Was it back to infrastructure?
I think it was back to infrastructure, but I just wondered if somebody could go and check that, and if it is to come to this committee, can we add it to the action register so it doesn't get forgotten about?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jess. Yes, Mr. Traynor.
I say there's no need to check if that's what you want, then we'll do it.
It's a matter of what committee is appropriate for it to come back to, possibly better here because it's full council. But
yeah. Okay, so the Infrastructure Committee receives and notes updates on the action register. I'm happy to move that. If I've got a seconder, please. Thank you, Mayor Bowen. All those in favour? Aye, carried. We'll move on to page 21, 8.2, the temporary road closures applications, section 342 and schedule 10, clause 11E LGA. So I welcome Susie again to speak to this report. Also just want to highlight to the councillors regarding the Mountain View School Ball. This is the first for 2025, and just attention with us preparing out to lower the budget going forward. We need to consider whether this is something we're still going to be happy to do throughout this next financial year. Okay, so Susie, I'll take the report as read if you'd like to speak to it.
Yeah, thank you. Just generally a standard report withstanding what our committee chair has said, so thank you very much for that. Noting that there has been discussion around, reducing that budget, and this could be an area that could be reduced. Historically, there has been road closures put in place for the balls to have their charges dropped off in their beautiful vehicles and a wide array of vehicles that we see coming through. They are travelling as a normal moving vehicle, so there is ability for them to drive into a safe pick-up and drop-off point. So there is other ways that we could look through, to achieve a similar result, noting that obviously it would be with other traffic that could be in the area at the same time if we didn't undertake the temporary traffic. Or, of course, there's the option to say that we wouldn't be funding it and for the high schools to fund them themselves.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair, actually I neglected a conflict because that ball is at the Landing Services building, so I'll just step back from this.
Sorry, I didn't really pick up that on the dates and that, but I totally view this as financial years for council, and I don't see how we can not fund one when in this financial year we have been funding them all. No, but we must have funded a whole lot in, from June 24. Yes, I'm talking about financial year for council. This must be the last as opposed to the first.
Well, if you look at it from the ball season, we're talking about 2025, so this is the first one of the 2025 year. So
Reluctant for two reasons. One, we generally make decisions around financial years for council, and I don't think we've really discussed and consulted with the community on our next annual plan. And two, given the proximity of time to this event, they've probably set the ticket price and everything, and if we go, we're not going to pay for the traffic management, it might leave them in a hole. I support moving forward that we have a close look at whether we fund them or not. I just feel we've left this one a bit late.
But you've got a decision here. You can choose to fund or not fund. You know, each one of these has been taken on its merits, an individual basis. So there's no policy sitting behind this really. It's you've got that decision today. So
It's been more of a practice of what council have done in the past, isn't it?
it has. And what I'm saying is, yeah, the ball season is about to start. This is the first one. So if you approve the Mountain View High School one, then it will be a lot harder to decline the others later on.
Noted, thank you.
Maybe through you, Madam Chair, I could just add that obviously driving into a car park, which isn't a road, it's associated with the road, but it's not a public road. So there is the ability in this location where they could drive in and turn around and come out and perhaps not need to do a road closure as we have historically done them in that location.
I guess what's happened here is we've lifted the lid on our financial situation, which is very poor. And later today, we're probably going to say no to other very good community organisations. And I take your point, Michelle. I also take Susie's point. There's other ways of doing it. And I would question, apart from Anzac parades and perhaps Christmas parades, while we're funding anything outside that, because we just don't have the money to do it. So if a particular school wants to do something, that's cool, but it's at their cost, not the ratepayers' cost. So my opinion is, because it is the beginning of the 2025 ball season, if we fund Mountain View, the other schools will come and say, well, you funded them for 2025. So sadly, but the reality is, I'd say no to that. They can find another way, and perhaps we can find them another way of managing their traffic.
Given the fact that in this case, correct me if I'm wrong, so in terms of a risk management profile on this one, it's quite easy to say we don't need to close the road. Giving them that information and the ability how to use that environment to make it, I suppose, function properly and meet the requirements of risk management. I suppose we can caveat that, hey, this is our decision based on it, but also go the way that we need to with them so that this is not actually going to be a road closure. When is the new risk profile provision actually hit for us?
So we can utilise the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management at any time. Yep. It's just that obviously with this particular case, any ball really, any case with someone undertaking an activity on the road that isn't one of our staff members, is that we do have overlapping duties. So as I mentioned last meeting, we've been drafting a practice note for works that are undertaken by council staff members in Road Reserve to reduce our traffic management burden. And this is something we could certainly look to create a pro forma type document for the schools to use. It would be the next cab off the rank, being that we're coming into bull season after we finalise our practice note for our worker inspections. So yes, there's certainly something that we could do there through you, Madam Chair.
If it's the will of this council to decline that, can we be proactive and write to every school we funded in the past and let them know?
Yes, we most certainly can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Susie,
Sorry,
Oh,
can I just ask a question?
absolutely.
So what I'm hearing, Susie, is that the Mountain View High School ball can actually still function without traffic management. Is that correct?
Yes, with the appropriate risk mitigation in place, and noting that since the road speed limit rule 2022 changed, we actually have got a 30-kilometre speed limit in the adjacent road to that area, so it actually has reduced the risk in that area. It would be, I suppose, the added risk of not running under a closure would be that you'd end up with other traffic mixing in, and whether or not there'd be an opportunity for antisocial behaviour, not sure, but that's just something to consider. But yes, through the NZ Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, we could look to not have lots of cones up in that location for ball drop-off. I'm sure Councillor Shannon will be happy about that.
Okay, well that's positive as long as they understand that and we can explain it with other stalls. I think that's a positive outcome.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Just since we're teasing things out, showcase on Sophia that we're funding. Can you tell me more, please?
I might actually have to get back to you on the details of that one, sorry. I can go get some more information and get back to you. I'm not entirely sure on the details of that one.
Susie, just a question on the, where is it, South Canterbury Car Club, the rally. Now, we've discussed from last year, following the closure for the rally, in terms of grading and the likes that may be required to reinstate the gravel roads to its pre-rally state, is there a cost involved and who will be paying for that?
Very good question. So generally speaking, it would be a normal inspection undertaken within normal timeframes. That could be 1 week, it could be 3 weeks before the rally occurs. We don't do any special inspection at this point in time. We could do that, it's just a bit more staff resourcing to arrange that. Generally, our roads that are used in those locations are graded on kind of a 6 to 8 week schedule, and everything's tidied up pretty quickly with a grade anyway. If that's something that we'd like to do an inspection and charge for, and then do a follow-up inspection, and if a grade is needed to be pulled forward, then yeah, that's something that we could charge for under the rules anyway.
Can I just say something? Yeah, I did have a couple of complaints around the Geraldine Ward around the roads not being reinstated straight after the rally, and I think that would be a prudent way forward, is to check those roads immediately after the rally and just make sure they're
Fantastic, we can take that on as an action.
I'd just like to go to Stephen Doran for a moment, please.
Hi, I was just to give you a little bit more information on that showcase on Sophia. It's a community arts funded, TDC supported event that's a road closure and has youth performers, food stalls and things like that on Sophia Street. It's organised by the Y and Presbyterian Support and the Pacifica group there.
Councillor Puddington.
Yeah, again, it's awkward because they probably organised the event thinking they're going to get that. Further down, cost of events yet to be approved, 17,000 for 4 more artesian markets. Again, is that something that falls under the bid rather than under the council? Are they privately run artesian markets, or are they? Because again, we need to get back to them and say,
I think that Venture Timaru has a bit of involvement in those artesian markets, so it may be an opportunity for their funding to come from VT.
Only coordination though. It's not physically involved in running the things. They are a commercial operation, those markets, so they need to pay for themselves. Like the amount of money there, and every time I go along to a public event and the traffic management there, it's like you're overpowered by the amount of road cones and flashing lights. It's like an overkill, and I just wonder whether we're shooting ourselves in the foot by, we're actually the ones implementing those regulations. It's our interpretation of that. So surely we should have some sort of a common sense approach to this and not be basing it on the 2 or 3% of idiots that potentially might drive through, rather than the 95% of good people who are going to be participating and considering where they are and what they're doing at the time. So I just wonder if there's some form of a kit that we had available and some advice, and then they head off and do it themselves at no cost.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I take your comments on board. As I said, we are adopting the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, which will enable us to look at it from a more risk-based approach, and have some perhaps better agreements between the organisers and council for the understanding of the overlapping duties. So we'll continue to work on that, and we are waiting. The idea of you've heard me say practice notes a couple of times now. The idea of those is they were kind of meant to be written by more government organisations, but as that doesn't seem to be happening at the speed that we'd like it to, we're starting to do some of that ourselves. So I suppose it just depends on how much risk we're willing to take.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, is where does the liability sit if we dial right back, even on a risk basis, and something like what happens overseas in Germany or somewhere like that, where someone decides they're going to drive through the event and take some people out. And I think we need to think that through as to where does that fit in terms of what we do and we don't, because we do need to think hard about the various events and making sure that they're safe, but they're also that we're encouraging them. So there's a balance in there that we need to get right.
Yeah, there has been, I guess, injuries and fatalities relating to temporary traffic management sites, and when the coroner investigates those, they do go back to the code of practice and look at that as best practice. So we do have to, take account of that and work to that as best we can. We can take some risk in dropping it back, but at the end of the day, we are responsible for the safety of those people it's a public road.
And I think going forward, as we prepare to lower the budget for this, hand in hand, we need to look at the definition of what this budget supports. So that it's a twofold. Yeah. Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Oliver.
Oh, sorry. I agree with Councillor putting in away around the school ball. So I did have a Cooper earlier yesterday morning just to ask him, and Geraldine don't have a temporary traffic management because they don't need one, but he sympathised around ratepayers having to pay for those closures and felt that probably it could be sucked up with a ball, or balls just have to adapt. And if they don't want to pay the cost, they have to adapt with their venue and how they run their ball. But, you don't want to be a killjoy around this, but, bringing Dad's tractor to the school ball might have to come to an end at some stage. About 6 last year, and I met them all at the rugby club, and they're all fired up there and causing noise and stuff, but it was quite exciting. I guess that's a good thing about it.
Yes, Councillor Shannon and then Councillor Puddington.
Yeah, just very quickly, already I've been in discussion with Katie and Paul, was it, regarding the Opahi College Ball in Temuka, and this is where this pragmatic risk-based approach is clearly going to work, that it's a 30 kilometre per hour variable limit around the entrance and exit of Opahi College School. So it was considered that it's slow traffic anyway, it's in the evening, not on a high traffic site. There'd be more mums in four-wheel drives picking up and dropping off kids at 9 o'clock in the morning than what's going to be going on for the Opahi College Ball. And that is the approach that's going to be adopted. Not 1,000 road cones, and I guarantee it'll be ideal. Temuka leading the way.
Sorry, just so I'm clear, going back to the artesian markets, do we go back to Venture Timaru, Well, who do we go back to and tell them we're not funding this so they don't come to us? And again, the bid, if it's something that promotes the inner city, but we've got to get out of funding these things, especially if it's for a commercial return.
Artesian markets, because they're a money-making operation.
Is it artesian or artisan? Yeah, no, it's just one. Yeah, because
you don't want to go down that hole.
I just everything's about water at the moment. I don't want.
So I think to answer your question, Councillor Pennington, when we review the budget hand in hand, we'll review what we are prepared to spend that budget on, and then we'll let stakeholders that have previously applied know of the new conditions that we're going to put towards the funding. All right. Any further discussion? We will look at the recommendations. So I've got recommendations 1 to 13. I will put it as a motion and see if there's a seconder to recommend motions 1 to 13, but not 9 for the Mountain View School Ball. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burt?
I agree with a caveat that that there is an alternative to this, and that we make sure that that is available to them.
So the recommendations will be recommend 1 to 13, except for 9, with the recommendation that we liaise with the school and ensure an alternative arrangement can be made for the safety of the attendees to the ball.
Easy. Thank you.
Yes, and would you like to add something to the 10th recommendation as well around the rallies and the inspection and costs to be borne by the organiser for any damage?
Yes, please. You got that, Joe? Fantastic. Okay, do I have a second? Councillor Jackson.
I'll be happy to second that.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got a motion, a seconder. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay. 8.3, we will move on to page 53. Oh, no, not 53, is it? 49. Okay, so I welcome Andrew Lester. So this is 8.3, the Claremont Water Treatment Plant Upgrade Strategy Steering Group. It is a report to discuss establishing a steering group for Claremont Water Treatment. I'll take the report as read and I'll open the floor to Andrew.
Morning. What we're looking to do here is set up steering groups, so governance and a technical group to go through. We're aware and we've reviewed through there's a lack of visibility of the project to date. We want to get better involvement with you guys to go through, so what we're proposing is setting up a steering group and also a technical group for council officers and SMEs on that front. There's been quite a lot of progress to date. There has been a change around going through because of some complications around taste and odour issues, and the visibility of these isn't really getting to the elected members. So by getting these steering groups up and running, we hope to improve that and get that better clarity.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognise this is quite a significant project for council. It is a very technical one though, but it certainly needs that visibility. And what the group we're setting up here, these two groups, is really based on the theatre and the stadium, which are also very significant projects for council. So it's just really following the same structure.
So they've identified the two groups as a project steering group and then the technical group. Is there any discussion on the participants recommended to be part of those groups? Yes, Mayor Nigel.
Look, as far as participants, 100% support. as it is, unless there's others that have interest, obviously, but 100% support this and happy to move it. This has been lacking on these key infrastructure projects. There again, I know you've heard me blurt on about this, but this is really the key project that's in our immediate sights, I believe. So, yeah, we need to be over it as a governance team, and we haven't been previously, and we won't look at the reasons why, but I just think this is a great move forward. So thank you to both Andrew and to the Chief Executive for recognising that.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver, did you want to second the recommendation? Any further discussion? Yes, Councillor Jackson.
So how will that steering group be decided, chosen? How does that work?
In the recommendations, it's got it listed H who would be a part of that group.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got a mover, a seconder. No more discussion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So there's no urgent business or minor nature. We did have a public forum. Is there any discussion that the councillors or mayor would like to have regarding the public forum that we had this morning? Yes, Councillor Pye.
I haven't had a chance to read it properly, but some of the recommendations that they're making, I see there. I think I saw one around a airport working group, and they've got other, requested actions for elected members. I think somebody actually needs to have a look at them and come back with a report when we've got the valuation, obviously, on how that process progresses. But that report needs to include some of this and reasons for not doing each of those recommendations.
So I think the report will come back once we've got the valuation. We can use this as attachments to go into the report as well, look at the recommendations, have a discussion, and sort out how future engagement and moving forward with this with them.
And like my understanding is Ashburton ended up at mediation. So I kind of want to be a bit more careful this time around what the report's asking us to approve, because if we're just going to end up at mediation, how we try and avoid that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it would be good to get consensus with the airport working group on the recommendation that is in that report. Working group, the user group, sorry.
In saying that, I'm sort of of the view of, sort of that arbitration, whatever, a mediation, that it might be value in that process in this regard. I do, though, just because we're all getting pulled into this, and I'm just conscious that is there a couple of elected members working with a couple of staff members that can pick this up, just so that group's all on the same page, and I'm happy to be involved in that, just so we can move it forward and hit some milestones. Obviously, we're waiting on that valuation, but it'd be great to land this like that.
You got your wheels down?
This year to, just to move it forward for everyone.
Just through you, Madam Chair, this shouldn't need councillors' involvement.
Well,
surely
it shouldn't.
Surely we, as officers, should be able to come up, negotiate, and then come back to you with, here is what we have negotiated. Are you comfortable with that? Do you resolve that? Because it might lead to the previous resolution being rescinded and a new one being put in place, depending on what we end up with. We should be able to do that.
Look, I'm happy with that, but I've just been pulled into this so many times over the years. I agree, it should be something relatively simple.
Because it's good if you guys can start at governance level, so as the officers can go and do the work, bring it back to you as governors, councillors, and then go yes or no.
And right or wrong, this is when we get pulled into these things, is when they're not done well. And whether that's right or wrong, and whether whether there's fault on either side, but it is when people feel like they don't get heard. That's the beauty of democracy, I guess. So, look, I'd love for this to get tidied up by officers.
Yeah, the key thing is getting that secondary valuation, and we have our own one. We don't believe we need to go and get another one ourselves. It's up to them to do that. The other point to clarify too is that the new lease includes rates. They won't be charged rates on top of the new lease rate. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally.
I don't think they understand that.
I do, just as far as the process, I do wonder if once you get that valuation, there is value in getting someone independent to come together just to get that finalised, because that rate is going to set it for all the not-for-profits that sit under there. Yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it with you,
leave it at council level.
Yeah, I'll leave it with the chief executive and group manager. Yeah.
Councillor Burt.
Yeah, I'm just mindful of the fact that there's been a lot of discussion by councillors around here, and there might have been some sort of pressure on staff to reflect some of the views of councillors, and I believe that if we leave it for council staff to do, I want them to be autonomous to the process and the valuation without any stress around the comments that have been made by councillors.
Yeah, I would hate for staff to feel pressured around that, but yeah, I don't think there's anything that we've heard that I would certainly pass on to staff. It's an independent process, so I 100% agree.
So the thought that the report was going to, the valuation was going to come after Easter, so the thought is that this will come back probably in a couple of months?
Yes.
2 months?
Depending on when we get the valuation,
Yeah.
really. That's the key piece of evidence we need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, Councillor Paddington.
I was concerned that the gentleman that owned Avtech said he hadn't signed his lease because of an insurance policy problem or something. We're not exposed out there, are we, in terms of insurance? I just want to make sure. That was the piece he said he was happy with the money but concerned over the insurance clause. So I don't want an answer now, but I want that cleared up.
It was Mr. Bruce Robinson.
Yeah, I understand that matter's been cleared up, but what's happened is that his initial lease, the rent has been reviewed since he got his original lease agreement. So although he's saying insurance is holding it up, it's actually the lease fee. Yeah, he wants to sign up on the old lease that was initially given to him 5 years ago.
So was that, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, was that hangar public liability insurance issue that we had around the value that they believe I think we put a new value on it, up to 2 million or something like that, and they were arguing that point because it pushed their costs up as well. Yeah.
I was privy that was definitely, it was to do with the level of public liability that was required.
Okay, good discussion. Thank you. Right, now we are going to move into public excluded for one report, 13.1. I'm happy to move us. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Burt. All those in favour? Aye, carried.
Welcome everyone to the community service meeting of the 15th of April. We'll get underway if everyone's ready, because we've got people here. I'd like to first of all welcome Ross and Jan from the community boards and Keith Shaw from the YMCA, who will speak later to his report. Any apologies? Noting Councillor Scott normally chairs the meeting, but she is online today.
Sorry, Councillor Piddington, I have a meeting at 12 with Minister Meagher, and I may just, depending on time, I might have to dart out before that.
Thank you, I'll note that. Your Worship. Public forum, I haven't been advised of any public forum. Any matters of urgent business? Any matters of minor nature from anyone? Okay. Declarations of conflict of interest?
Yes, just declaring YMCA chair.
Okay, so Councillor Scott for items 8.4 and 8.5. Do I need to move into that? Keep going. No, cool. Okay, you'll have to read the schedule of functions attended by the chairperson because she's not here, so just move that. Thanks, Gav. Seconder. Thanks, OJ. The actions register 8.1. Oh, sorry, I did indeed. The minutes from the previous meeting, is no controversy there. Moved by Peter Burt, seconded by Scott Shannon. Thank you. We'll now move to the actions register. A couple of items there. Policy update on bequests for the collection of the art gallery. There's no further action. We're waiting for the Code of Ethics to be updated in June 2025. The second one is the Cafe Seabay full profit and loss report. We're working towards that, and there's also a 17A review of the pools that will cover that. So we'll just wait until those reports are received. Everyone happy with that? The next one, sorry everyone, is the Agantai Gallery House, the pump shed. We've got a paper on that today, or a notice on that today, Paul?
My understanding, Mr Chair, is that there was in the action point, or in the update, there's a comment that officers are seeking to test governor's thinking in relation to whether or not they want to go to the next step of having another engineering design put forward that might reduce the visual impact of the pump shed.
If I'll give an update on that, WSP said that they would look at it free. They came back and said, yes, there's stuff in there that could be moved, but this is as far as we've gone at this stage. Now, the point will be then, do we spend any money on this or do we just leave it alone?
I guess there's been some community feedback over that shed, and a kind philanthropist who doesn't like the look of it might help with funding. So I'm wondering whether we let the engineering company, WSP, complete their work and just see where it lands, because it's of no cost to us. And the second point is, if they do come up with a design that does work, why didn't we come up with it in the first instance? Mayor Bowen.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Piddington, through you. The next stage, though, with the WSP, is there cost for the next stage? They've sort of come up to this point, but I assume there'll be cost into the future, is there?
I would need to talk to them.
Yep.
I think it's aesthetically more pleasing to the eye now that it has that wrap around it. So I don't have a huge desire to go any much further with it at this stage.
Councillor Burt.
I'm the same, and I mean, I think I'd be following your sensibilities around all these things. Yes, it was a shock at the beginning. It has now been aesthetically more pleasing because of where it is and what it is. I think in this environment we shouldn't even be worrying about a WSP report. It needs to be stalled, and if someone, as you say, can come up in the community that wants to do that, it also should include the cost of that report.
Okay, so the general feeling is we'll just let this one lie and we'll remove it from the actions register. Okay. Let's solve that one. Thank you. Okay, the Agantai House Gallery full and final report to be presented when the list and toilets are completed. There is a $25,000 discrepancy between what was budgeted for the lift and the quote received. Officers are exploring the options to reduce this. I would like an explanation of what that actually means. Thanks, Matt.
Morning all. When I came back to the subcommittee wanting to use the reserve funds for the toilets, the lift and the HVAC, we had two of those prices, and I'd always sort of said that one of them was the lift was an unknown because we didn't know what the structural work was involved in the house. We have had that now done and completed, and that price did come in more expensive than what we'd budgeted. But overall, I'd asked to use 580,000 of the reserve funds. Once that was quoted by, I put it out to market for 3 people, 2 replied. Once that came back, we were sitting at 605, so over. So I spoke to managers above me and said, right, what's the approach we want to take from here? So I went back and looked for some cost savings, which we can make some cost savings, and I've basically got it down to being 584 is the final price, so 584,000.
Cool, so $4,000 over. Can you explain what those cost savings are? Because I just want to make sure they don't bite us at a later stage.
Yep. So we're putting dehumidifiers into the gallery. Now, when they design it for a peak load, which is 280 people at a time. To save costs now, we would not install one of those dehumidifiers and pick it up at a later date when we were able to, funds became available or could ask for more funds. It will still operate well in the gallery. It's just at the peak load when you've got a big function or something there with that many people, it will just struggle while that many people are in there. But overall, normally it would be fine. So.
Councillor Pye.
How many times a year would that many people be in there?
Yeah, so about 3 or 4 a year.
Just one question from me, Matt. Would we have to close the gallery for that work, and if we put the third one in later on, close it again, or does that work? Is it behind the scenes?
So the whole HVAC install will pretty much be done with the gallery open. If we need to do any works during a day, it would be on the Monday that they were closed. So the only time we need to close part of the gallery is when we do the lift install. We will close the house gallery and part of the octagon and keep the remainder of it operating.
Do you have a time period for how long that'll be closed to install the lift? I'm just conscious that the public are a bit sick of our gallery being closed.
Yeah, we're looking at 6 weeks approximately is what I've been told. The reason, look, I would love to have got this all done as well, but we just needed to make sure we weren't overstepping any budgets or anything like that. So, we're taking an easy approach to it. So, yeah.
Councillor Pye.
I'm just questioning why we would even bother putting that third dehumidifier in at all for 3 or 4 times a year, or is there a serious risk to the collection on those 3 or 4 times a year that they get damaged?
No, it's like trying to go up a hill in a mini. It gets, yeah, no. So what we'll be doing is pushing the system harder while it's not in, and it's just working above its optimum. So if you put the 4th one in, it just relaxes the system for long-term wear and tear and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Just thinking you don't buy a Range Rover to drive up a hill 3 or 4 times a year.
I can go back and ask the question on what the effect would be of just keeping it at 3.
Councillor Scott, have you got anything online? Sorry, then Councillor Burt.
No, I don't. When I was talking to Mr. Cooper, my understanding is we were probably 80 to 100k short. So is that changed since I talked to you on Thursday?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, but there were some overs and unders within the budget that enabled it to be just 25 over overall of the 580 that we're looking for. So yes, a certain part of it, the building work for the lift is where the price increase was, but because we'd made savings elsewhere, we managed to get it back to 25 over. So that's my understanding.
Any other questions for Matt? Pete?
It's just, it was sort of asked by you, but not really answered. Will it compromise the artwork if we don't have it? Because I know, obviously with 200 odd people 5 or 6 times a year, is it the location? Sorry, 3. Oh, yeah. I was hoping that we were going to get a gain there because there might have been some increase in revenue. Does that, bearing in mind the times that I've been there for those types of events, they're always contained to the lower area, not generally upstairs and all that. Is there a way to demarcate that, and does that help?
Yeah, we are demarcating it as it is anyway. The dehumidifiers are only going in the more modern part. They're not going into the house because that has new HVAC units in it anyway. So what the proposal is there was a dehumidifier to go into the octagon, and that's the one we won't put in to start with. So we'll concentrate in the main collection area, the main gallery area, and in the entrance area we will have the dehumidification, whereas in the octagon it's sort of a lesser exposed area. But I will go back to the designer and ask the question.
Any other questions for anyone?
I just have, one more. So the 25k, we're approving that expenditure today. Is that how that works?
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, Councillor Scott, we're not getting the 3rd dehumidifier, although we are putting in the plumbing and electrical work for it, so that we can do that at a future date where we're not disturbing the operation of the gallery, but we are able to operate the gallery completely with adequate dehumidifying, if that's the term, on 2. We'll just put it under a bit more stress when we have those large gatherings. So we're future-proofing it if council chooses to, or we raise that money and we want to go back in the future and pop it in the new financial year, or we might just see how it goes, but Matt will probably be able to find out more information about the impacts of that long term if we're making the system work harder.
So can I just clarify things here then? So the original plans for 4, is it? 4 dehumidifiers?
The original plans was for 4. We managed to consolidate 2 of them into an in-roof version in the main gallery. So then there's 3 physical units going in. So now we'll cut that down by 1.
To two?
To two. But the one that's going into the main gallery is effectively two units.
And this 25,000, if we don't do it and we decide that for a whole bunch of reasons we have to do it, will it cost us more to revisit and then do it? Is it a stitch in time to save 9?
Quite possibly.
Right. And the overall budget and the overall budget for this art gallery was the whole lot.
3.7.
And how much over the 3.7 will we be if we do this extra 25,000?
Nowhere near. So at the moment we've got remaining contingency of 205,000, and we've got 810,000 reserve fund, which we will then fund these projects out of the reserve.
And these don't come to 800,000, do they?
No, we'll be pretty much overall still 400,000 to 500,000 under budget.
So aren't we better off asking the council to approve the 25,000 and do the job properly and do it once? Do it once and do it properly.
I actually agree, because otherwise we're forever going to be going back. Once we've done this, it's done. Fingers crossed, we've got the gallery open and it works as it should, albeit for, Michelle, 4 or 5 groups a year. I mean, we might get greater usage, so I'll open that up, but my thought is we put the third one in, job done, because we had that full amount funded, which will still come in under.
So I just want to be clear, if I may. So the entire job is under the original budget. Is the issue with the 25 in that it's over what tenders and procurement, I think it was, approved to be spent on stuff that was outside of the original scope, but we had the money in the original budget? I'm confused about what is the 25 now?
So I'm going to answer that, and Matt might correct me. It's the lift that is over. So we did an estimate for the lift. It's that is over. Everything else is fine.
We, if I recall rightly, at a tenders and procurement, we approved a set amount to be spent out of the contingency or what was left in the budget or whatever on these things. So is the problem it's gone over that approval? I'm confused why we're even talking about this now.
So I came to on the 30th of July to the subcommittee and said, look, to finish the job, we have these reserve funds. Can we install these 3 items? So I got 580,000 is what I estimated at the time. I knew I had 2 fixed costs, and we thought we'd allowed enough for the lift, just due to the structural work we have to do, because we've got to remember we're cutting into the side of a building here. The lift part is what went above what I'd estimated. But so when you read the report, I asked for 580,000. So I took it as a global view of, right, I'm 25,000 over my 580, and that's when I went above and sought direction on what to do from there. So that's when I then backed back some costs.
But still, overall, the entire project's under the original budget. We can argue about whether the original budget was too much or not, but...
But overall, after these works done, we'll be 400,000 to 500,000 under budget.
So just for clarity, Matt, the dehumidifier you've taken out gets you under budget because of the lift problem, but if we allow you 25,000, you'll deliver everything and it will be still under the original budget allocated.
The overall Egantai seismic upgrade budget, yes.
Well, to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to move that we spend the extra 25. Is that, Paul? Or how do we have to do that?
Well, I think because we haven't brought a paper, you can't make a resolution because we're not asked for a decision as such. But I think you can give direction possibly to the Chief Executive to use his delegation to authorise that.
It's actually within my delegations.
Yeah.
Well, I think unless anyone speaks opposed within your delegation, not Mr. Traynor, I think you're fine to spend that amount of money. Oh, sorry, yes.
Can I just ask a question, please? So the original lift that you had in the 580,000, what was that again? That was that 200,000 or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, it was 250, I think we had allowed for it. I'd have to confirm that.
So what is it gone up to now?
It's 310, but we've made savings on the HVAC. Not by cutting anything out. We got some further pricing and managed to reduce that by quite a substantial amount.
Yeah, so the dehumidifier is 60,000, is that what you're saying? So that's where the cost savings were to get us back, but once we put it in, that's, so it evens out is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's evened out to be, if I stuck to the original project, 25,000 over budget, or over the 580 I asked for. Yeah. Unders and overs.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Bowen.
Thanks, Councillor Piddington. Yeah, look, fully support, but I do think we do have to remember, although it's within budget, it is loan funded. So, every dollar that we save and don't borrow is positive. So, but I think for 25 grand, let's get it finished and we've got a good product for the community.
The last thing is I want it to remain as an item till we get the full report, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Matt. From the Art Gallery, I think to the library next. Michael, would you like to come up? There was a question around decline in numbers and the way forward.
Yes, good morning. I'll stand for any questions, but basically what happened is about a little under a year ago, we changed the way the system that we used for counting people at the library. So previously it was at the gates as people come in. Now it's on the ceiling. It's a newer technology. It's more accurate. So it's not to say the numbers we had before were inaccurate, but they were prone to overcounting. In a way, the system supposedly is a bit more accurate, has a radius that it doesn't double count, it only single counts people as they come in through the library, or even get close to the counter itself. So just generally, we're working with more accurate numbers these days compared to the past.
I just had one question. I mean, it's probably AI. What did it cost to install the new system?
That I should have looked up, unaware what it cost. I think it was comparable with the old system, but I'd have to check those figures. It was installed a little before I came here.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Councillor Shannon.
Thank you, Stu. Just following on from this, I'm also interested in when these visitors come through the doors, what are they doing? Because you already have some data, I'm sure, in terms of how many people are issuing books, for example. Are they coming in for information? Just to help us to understand what people are doing. So it's one thing to coming through the door, but then what are they doing once they are in the door?
Well, we'd certainly invite any of you to stop by the library for an extended period of time for a tour if you want to check in on a program. But so they come into the library for varying needs these days. So yes, certainly there's checking out the collections. There's also, we put on a whole range of programming, particularly for children. We host a bunch of community groups in our community room. It's pretty solidly booked these days with all day pretty much, from the time we open at 9 through to 6 o'clock. And then there's the information needs that people have. So what we're finding is we're filling a lot of gaps these days in the community. For instance, there could be an older member of the population gets a new cell phone, is wanting to learn how to use it, stops by the library, and we can help them to a certain degree, how to use that device and set them up in terms of their future usage, particularly looking at library products. So there's a lot of digital products we offer now, so that's where we start them, and then it's kind of up to them to take it from there.
Yeah, I understand the good things that are going down, that do happen in there, but what is the breakdown of that? That's what I'm interested in. If we're going to record data, it'd be good to get, and of this, these people are doing this, from the data that you have, for a fuller, clearer, more accurate picture.
Yeah, and if you'd like that, I can certainly break down the categories. I could put in programming numbers, I could put in checkouts every month or quarterly. Yeah, I can design that any way you like it.
Councillor Pye. Oh,
Sorry, just going back to the system, and I know you won't be able to answer this because it was before your time, but did we upgrade that because the old one wasn't working, or did we just go, it's not quite accurate, we can do this better, and then spend a whole lot of money, which we don't know what amount it was, because it's a better product? Because that is a concern to me.
Sorry, on that point through you, Mr Chair, because I do remember in my time here, I think as a councillor, where we upgraded the system and there was a significant cost at the time, and that's not that long ago. It's only within the last sort of 6 years, I think, that that's happened. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot of money to spend potentially.
So is there any point in adding that to the action register, that we understand that, or it's done now, so be it? I don't know.
I guess what I would like to see as a councillor is, if we are introducing any of those technologies to a museum or an art gallery, we're aware of them and what the purpose is for them and the cost before we do it, just so we're clear about what we're going forward with.
So as soon as we get a bit of clear water, which is in the next 2 or 3 months, SLT is going to have a workshop to actually help inform an information system strategy. Now, it's quite clear in this organisation, historically, each unit have done their own thing. And then the CIA gets informed of what they've done and needs to be able to pull that into the main systems. So we're going to stop that, and we're going to have an information strategy that we all own. And if there's a project for something new, then we all know about it. And there's some classics in this organisation where potentially we've selected the wrong solution, and we've probably selected the wrong solution because there wasn't a broader group of people involved in that selection. So we want to stop that.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr Chair. Yeah, fully support that, Mr Traynor. And then, you know, wider to that, and this isn't reflection on that product, Michael, and acknowledge that you've taken over from after that's been made, but it's interesting to know what criteria, though, you know, something like that, a CapEx of some description, has to go through and how it's tested. Is it just sitting within budget, and so it's in year X and we go ahead and do it because for whatever reason, or is that robustly tested? And yeah, I'm sure you're over that, Mr Traynor, as far as the changes, so you probably don't need to comment on it, but just a comment.
Well, I will comment on it. I'm used to an environment where CapEx have business cases. We don't do that. We might do it for the odd big one, like a theatre or a stadium, but for most CapEx, we don't do a business case. We don't say this is the need, this is why we're doing it, and here's the timeframes. We've got to get into that regime.
Concur totally with the Chief Executive on that. We need business cases. Michael, one thing I'm interested in, you mentioned digital products, and that's growing. We're trying to save money, but year after year we spend the same amount on books. So explain that to me, because if we're trying to save cost savings, you're in the hot seat.
It's a whole separate conversation, and I'd be happy to have it with you privately, but what we're seeing is books aren't going away. People just want more and more of whatever product it is, and they don't necessarily, if they want something, they don't care if it's digital or physical, they just want the book or the audiobook or the DVD or movie or whatever it is. And people are just a lot more savvy in their usage these days. They're happy with digital, they're happy with physical, they'll just do what they need to do to get that product.
Councillor Pye.
This is a little bit left field, but I've heard in the past, and I could have this wrong, that we pay quite a substantial subscription for the digital platform, which I'm totally okay with. I've got an e-reader, I don't use the library, but can we work together, collaborate, amalgamate, whatever you want to call it, with other district councils, so we're not all paying that subscription? Or does it work on, how does that subscription work? Because I was given the impression that it's a flat rate. And so if there were 3 councils sharing that cost of that flat rate, everyone's a winner.
You'll be happy to know we are a member of several consortiums for the digital platform, so we pay a set fee. It's usually divvied by population, so I can go into more detail, but we've got a South Island consortium and then a more regional Canterbury consortium for another.
I think what this points out, Michael, none of us really know what the library does and how it works, even though we all enjoy it. So it might be useful at some stage, and there's no particular rush, but give us a breakdown of those digital products we use, the cost of them versus the traditional book. I'm tactile, I like opening a book, but I get that, but probably we do need to know a wee bit more about what we're doing there.
Yep, I'm happy to help any way you want me.
So that action, everyone's happy that that action point comes off as it stands? Okay, invite Jess up for the next couple of items. Oh, sorry, Sarah.
Just a general comment, and I also think there's a bit of self-responsibility that if we don't understand as councillors, we actually go out and source that information ourselves rather than the expectation that everything's going to be brought into this room. So I think, you know, if there is questions, we need to understand them, and plus we also need to, and I think as good governors and not getting into the weeds as well, I think there's sometimes there's a bit of a clash over that. So
Could I make a suggestion?
Just my statement.
Can I make a suggestion? These standing committees is probably a great use of time for each one have a different service come and present. This is what we do. This is how we do it at the right level, so that you guys are actually a lot better informed. Like we could start that off easily with, you know, say the library, and then follow it up with the museum, follow it up with the art gallery, follow it up with the pools. Because it'll make your decision making slightly more informed.
I agree with most of what Councillor Parker said, but we cannot just go and find the financial information. And I have asked time and time and time again for a better breakdown through long-term plan and annual plan. And I got one overnight around environmental services because I'd asked a question, came back pretty quick. And I'm like, why don't we have that breakdown for every activity? And that is my biggest frustration. That would answer a lot of questions that I ask anyway.
I accept what Councillor Parker said, but I guess I'm interested in the move across, you know, from traditional to technology and whether we're funding the right piece of it. But, yep, happy for that to happen. Mr. Trainer's suggestion.
Sorry, I do need to just skip out for a meeting. And apologies, I won't be here for the discussion, but I just wanted to bring up just for a moment, the why funding. And I know we are tight, and I'm not going to be here for the discussion and the debate, and so, you know, I haven't necessarily formed a view, but I'm conscious that that is probably the only, you know, actual agreement that we have with a youth provider. We talk so many times over the years around better engagement, and I just feel like that is it for us. Yes, through LTP and some other things, we do more, and we should do more, but before we rush to, you know, bringing that funding back, you'll be here for the discussion and hear from Keith, obviously, but I just would just throw caution before you, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to be here.
Welcome, Jess.
Need to move the actions register recommendation, or is there two more?
It's still on it,
we're still going.
Come on, we've got the not getting away that easily, Michelle. Jess, welcoming committees. There was just a question originally regarding a survey that came back around refugee youth for those online. If you can just give us an update.
Kia ora koutou. Yes, so we did a youth survey. We had 17 participants respond. We ensured that we provided those questions to them in Arabic so that they were able to answer in their native language, and then we got that translated back. We got some really good feedback which has informed the leadership program that we are now running. It's actually on today, it's on tomorrow as well. So we've got the New Zealand National Refugee Youth Council that is working with, we had 29 young people show up last week, and I think, Keith, you mentioned there might have been about 25 at the Y this morning, so it's a really good turnout. That is being funded through the Meaningful Refugee Participation Fund, which we have accessed through MB. That is a fund that is only accessible to councils, so it's funding that we're able to provide that no other service could do, and that means that we are able to provide those young people with leadership opportunities, skills and training. In regards to the summary of the survey, they let us know some of the challenges that they're facing while they're living here in Timaru. Language barriers was by far the most significant barrier. The most significant challenge, and they've let us know that impacts their communication with us being the welcoming community, and with other cultures. It limits their job opportunities. Some also talked about some bullying they've experienced, and challenges integrating into society. So they let us know what they would like to see to feel more connected to the community, what services they think they're missing out on. So we got a really good range of information, and I have sent out that summary to you all, but happy to answer any questions as well as best as I can.
Any questions, anyone?
Got a quick question. Do you use AI to break down those language barriers and those written barriers and all that?
Yeah, yes, definitely. So a lot of the volunteers that are working with the whānau, they are using Google Translate, and it's good to a point, but yeah, they are using that. We have a couple of Arabic speakers that are in the community, and specifically Isra, who works at Refugee Settlement. She's a very busy lady. There is a lot of translation that is needing to happen across the community. So yeah, they definitely are using AI, and as that technology continues to improve, it'll be used more, but it's still, things still need to be checked. I attempted it. Before I sent it to Ezra to translate my questions, I did put it through AI and said, how did it come up? They said, not that great. So we definitely used Ezra as the expert to make sure that we're getting the right information to our young people.
Thanks, Jess. Are we happy to remove that now we've had our response?
Yep.
Cool, thanks, Jess. And the next one is the Community Development Mayor's Task Force. I see it's deferred to the next meeting, so we'll take that as read. And the final one, Councillor Pye.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Mr Chair.
Smarty grants, I think we'll leave that on because it looks like a September. Was that last September or this September, the full launch? This September. Okay, so we need to leave it on till then. There has been some work done on that. Any questions on Smarty grants? Can I have a mover, Michelle, that...
I'd love to move that report, thank you very much.
A seconder? Councillor Shannon, thank you. So we'll move on to 8.2, Community Services Update Report. Without rushing people, I just want to acknowledge we're well behind time, so let's keep the questions succinct. Is Kirsty or who's preparing that? Are you laughing at that, Councillor Burt? It's a different view from up here. Paul, are you?
Thank you, Mr Chair, and through you. It's my name on the report, although this is very much a team effort. The unit managers all feed into this, and then we try and get it all sounding of a similar tone and put it before our elected members. So I'm happy to present the report as read and take any questions. And if I can't answer them, I've got the team in the room today to help out. Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions on the community services update? Can I have a mover that on the report be accepted? Thank you, Councillor Burt. Councillor Parker seconding that. Thank you. Next in line is 8.3, Community Funding Subcommittee. Recommendations for funding. Naomi, if you could come and maybe talk to this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, or is it still morning all? I'm presenting the recommendations from the community funding meeting to be approved or declined. I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions you have around that.
So any questions on those grants? Anyone? Yep, Councillor Pye.
Sorry, I think I've asked this before and I can't remember the answer you gave me, but for us, when you just say decline, I kind of thought we'd talked about just putting a very short comment, did not meet the criteria, or funding from other sources, or no funds available or something, because just to go decline, and I know we've got to trust the subcommittee's recommendation, but we're the ones approving it and we have no idea of why we're declining some of these things.
That's through you, Mr. Chair, that's the valid point. We do discuss it at the time, and as you can see, this round was severely oversubscribed for the amount. More detail can be given to the applicants, but I certainly can ask for that from the committee, the subcommittee, to provide that.
The committee does give feedback, Councillor Pye, to the groups regarding why it hasn't been accepted. And I guess it's like tenders and procurements, everything else. We just get this paper in front of us and you have to trust your fellow councillors. Okay, so...
Really want to be entering to debate either. I mean, you don't want to...
Don't want that. It's more, if you get questioned by a member of the community or something else, it's just like, we've got no idea. It's just decline.
Yeah, I think we do give them feedback as to the reasons behind if they weren't accepted, and with this group, they can come back. Sometimes we've told people to tidy up their application and maybe come back next time. So move through that. So the recommendation is that I'm going to say we approve the recommendations from the Community Funding Subcommittee. Thank you, Gavin. Seconder. Thank you, Peter. Those in favour? Against? Thank you. Okay. Provision of youth support for the services for the Timaru District Council. I will ask Paul and perhaps the CE to speak to that. And then we will move forward, noting what the Mayor had said before he had to depart for another meeting. Oh, sorry. I flicked too. Sorry, Keith. I was thinking we got that out of order. Welcome, Keith Shaw from the YMCA to receive and to present his report on what they've been up to regarding youth. Keith, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Piddington. It's my pleasure to present this report. As you're aware, the Y has been delivering youth support services within this district for the past 13 years. And you'll see from the reports over the many years, the mahi that we're undertaking, youth leadership mentoring programs, community driving scholarships, youth refugee support, etc. In addition to these programs and services, our key youth advocacy and youth projects strive to represent all young people across this district, provide them with a voice, and to ensure aspirations and dreams are represented at all levels within our district. The biannual youth survey that has now been running for 10 years or so is a key example of the advocacy work that the Timaru District Council funding allows the Y to undertake, and shares with stakeholders district-wide. We also run several youth events. This year, the Mud Festival out at Pleasant Point, Showcase on Sapphire during Youth Week, and the Voice Youth Art Awards that have been operating for 15 odd years. The Timaru District is embarking on a Towards 2050 strategy, where we are looking at shaping the future of the Timaru District together. This strategy is our district's long-term vision to grow our economy and community, while ensuring that everyone feels supported, connected and valued. Whakamana takata, whakamana taihui. Through empowering the mana of people, we here at the Y empower the mana of youth. We acknowledge that Timaru District Council, like all of us, are facing economic and budgetary challenges. I'm here today to highlight that young people living within our district are our future. I'm urging councillors, therefore, to support an investment of $1.45 per ratepayer per annum to fund district-wide youth support services support and retain this worthwhile funding in support of the district's young people. We acknowledge these are testing and challenging times, and there is still work to be done. For example, let's work together with Timaru District Council to develop a youth strategy for the district. We have an age-friendly strategy aimed at improving the well-being of older residents in this district. The absence of a youth-friendly strategy embedded within an overall district-wide strategy would speak volumes to our young people and to the future prosperity of our district. The Y is capable of facilitating this work whilst also promoting the district as a vibrant and future-focused district that values all young people. This future mahi, it starts here today with tangible support by you as individual district councillors. We have this saying at the Y, #MakeItHappen, and I call on each of you to contribute, to continue to support the Y, to work with your staff, to walk alongside and continue to support young people living within this district and to advance their voice, their aspirations and representation as actively contributing citizens to our district. Open to take questions.
Questions for Keith, anyone? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Keith. Just if you weren't to get the funding from Timaru District Council, what would that mean for the Y, for your youth services? Are there other streams of income open to you, or where does that leave you?
Yeah, so the advocacy work that we do across all young people is funded exclusively from Timaru District Council funding. So we would continue to deliver contracted services for a rangatamariki, for example, or for the Ministry of Youth. But we would be peeling back our youth services across the district as a consequence of not retaining this funding. And I suppose this is something that, whilst we have a growth mindset at the Y, and whilst we continue to expand our service provision across the Y, we are receiving knockbacks of funding in the community lottery space, for example. In the past 3 years, we've been receiving $60,000 per annum. This year, we're receiving $0. So it's really a challenge for an organisation like the Y to continue to have a growth mindset, pursue and advocate for young people when our district is not behind that. We have relationships with our other district councils. We've entered into a recent new partnership with Mackenzie District Council to expand into Twizel, for example. So it's not uncommon for us to have strong relationships from our TLAs within our respective areas of delivery.
Any other questions, Peter?
I don't really have a question, and I'm always the one that always says you should have a question. I might just couch it by what other councillors think of this, but I see that central government have basically said all 4 pillars of what we stand for as TAs are going to go, and in that was, social and the social and moral obligation of us to know and understand what is important in our community. I see that one of the really social and moral obligations is growing and understanding our youth and how they engage and what they do in our community. And I see, and I've always seen that the why is so important in the space, and the funding that we've given in the past is extremely important. And while I understand that the government is saying, central government is saying that if we stick to our knitting, if we stick to our other things, all those other things take care of themselves. Well, they don't, and they never will do. So my opinion is that this is fundamental to us, and it should be morally fundamental to us. And my hope and my question is, what do other councillors think of that?
I guess that's the next paper, 8.5. Appreciate your passion.
Councillor Pye, I'm really early.
Councillor Pye.
Keith, I'm really interested in this youth strategy you referred to. Is how do you turn that into an action? What is required from either the Y, TDC, funding-wise? How do you get that off the ground?
Yeah, well, it starts with engaging with all young people across our district. So it's driven from bottom up, as opposed to the development or creation of, for example, a youth council, for example. And so it's about bringing young people from all walks of life across our district, across all of the towns within our district, to have a view that contributes to economic and community development. This means that actually, if I look around the room, that these aren't ideas that will come from some grey-haired gentleman or some mature-looking woman. This is from young people, and it will start with face-to-face hui workshop that will start to develop a strategy that will then engage all members of our community in the same way as an age-friendly strategy was developed.
I understand that and 100% agree, but is this in your strategic plan and budget, or do you need council to fund that, or have it in their strategic plan, or how are you going to turn that into action?
So many TLAs across the country have a youth strategy. This council doesn't, and so the way in which it's effectively an outcome for this council, and we would facilitate that, working alongside your officers to ensure that the end outcome of this piece of work is that our council would then adopt a youth strategy and be approved by council.
Just a question. I was involved with the age-friendly strategy, and we received funding through the Ministry for Seniors. Is there any such funding available for the youth, do you know of, that you'd be able to access to help develop a strategy?
Not specifically relative to a youth strategy for a TLA. So TLAs, as we've heard earlier, do have funding availability that are specific to TLAs. So I'm not sure whether that's available to this council. It's not available to the YMCA, and I suppose the work that we do in this district to advocate and represent young people and foster the interests of young people is all up and above nationally funded contracts who deliver outcomes specific to their cohorts as opposed to across population.
I was just going to suggest that if I have this right, our local MP is also the Minister of the South Island and
Correct.
Minister of Youth, and might be a good person to advocate for funding.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for your time, Keith. Very eloquent, and noting, I did note the $1.45 per annum per ratepayer. That was very clever, I thought. but puts it into context in some ways. So I can have a mover please that the Community Services Committee receive and note the Central South Island YMCA Youth Report. Thanks, Michelle. Scotty, thank you. Seconder. Which leaves us on to, the big question in 8.5, the provision of youth services to the Timaru District Council. Just before we discuss it, I want to note the recommendation is the Community Services remove the 30,000 from the Community Development Operational Budget and agree to discontinue the service for the provision of youth services in Timaru. We have to be fair to our staff that we have been telling them every meeting and every second breath we take to save money. So I would suggest this isn't a critique of the services provided in any way. It's just clearly a way to save money. We can discuss the report and ask any questions from Paul or the CE. Thank you, Mr. Trainer.
So there's actually two issues here, I think. One is the $30,000, which I think is one issue. The second issue then is if you decide not to continue with the 30,000, then that has its own path. If you decide to continue with the 30,000, then who should get it? So effectively, if you look at youth services, and I don't know a lot about these entities, if you go into, if you Google youth services Timaru, about half a dozen entities come up. Enabling Youth, ADL, ComCol, Youth Services. So there's more entities out there, potentially not-for-profit, that are actually dealing with youth services. Secondly, when you look at other services for our communities, aged care, or NGOs that are doing aged care or doing various different health things, we actually don't fund them other than through our grant process. So on page 30, you can see that we've approved operational costs for Ashburton Safer Communities, South Canterbury Multiple Sclerosis, Muscular Dystrophy, Royal New Zealand Plunket, Citizen Bureau, Age Concern. So through that process, we've contributed to their operating costs. Yet for some reason, we have this youth one sitting out by itself through a contract with the Y. So the reason why we've put up this recommendation is one for councillors to decide, does the 30,000 stay? And taking on board, the current central government's view. And then secondly, which probably should be another recommendation, is, okay, if it does stay, how do you distribute it and who do you distribute it to? Do you make it contestable, or do you just go and contract back with the Y? So there's a couple decision points here.
Okay. Councillor Pye.
In a previous life, I was renowned for sitting on the fence a lot. And I used to say it's because you get a better view when you're sitting on the fence of both sides. I don't actually want to make this decision today in isolation of decisions through our annual plan program in relation to all community funding. So I just don't really see how we can go cut this one off at the knees, but hey, we're going to keep that funding over there, or vice versa, keep this one, but we're going to cut all the other funding. And in my mind, they're all similar things. They're all funding community services, and the decision should not be made ad hoc, fund this one, don't fund that one. Why don't we look at community funding en masse?
Councillor Burt.
I know that Councillor Scott is online and she has a conflict of interest, but she's not going to vote on this if we did decide today. But I mean, she's in a unique position to give us information and understanding for the actual services that the Y give. And I know that, and I've had connection with the Y and what they do and an understanding for their penetration into our community and how organised and how professional it is. and therefore, and youth is so underfunded. So I don't know, if the rest of the councillors agree and Councillor Scott's agree, could she give us some sort of background as to what the ramifications for losing this money are?
I'd be pretty uncomfortable with that, to be honest.
I just don't want to put Councillor Scott in a difficult position that then somebody will challenge. I wonder if we're allowed to ask the YCE, which I think he's already answered some of that questions anyway. But I agree that Councillor Scott has an inside view, but we may compromise.
Yeah, I don't want to compromise Councillor Scott and it be reflective of a decision either way that we were influenced. Councillor Parker.
I support Councillor Pye's recommendation about looking at the community spend as a whole and not as individual pockets of money. So I would support the motion going forward.
Yeah, look, I agree too, because we've got a discussion around grants and it's a different way of funding people, but, you know, the answer could be the same through some of the grants we give. For events, organisations end up landing with a handsome amount of money. So I actually think we can't do this in isolation anyway.
Because I don't want to give the wrong impression, because I do actually support this work, but if we took what you were suggesting to the letter of the law, and I know I've challenged council on this before, we would just cut all of those community grants, the whole lot, including this one. So I just think it needs further discussion in its entirety.
I don't want to split hairs because it's the same thing. It's actually a service agreement, but just so we're clear, but it's the same. It's out of the same. I agree, Councillor Pites. Stephen.
If you wanted to leave the decision on the table today for a future meeting, you can do that and not have to make any decision one way or the other.
That's where I would be most comfortable, because I think we're going to have this discussion over the next 6 weeks or flesh it out. And to the Chief Executive's point, there are other youth services. I'm not suggesting we use them, but we need to have a wider discussion. I'm going to let Councillor Booth speak and he's going to say can the lot, but we'll hear it from him.
I was just going to say that, you know, you look back at all those declines and it's like we get the same applications from the same outfits and they've all, every year, and it's like they just troll around and find those applications, opportunities to get free money. And so that's what occurs. And what I don't particularly like at all is the fact that actually we're borrowing all that money to give away on behalf of the ratepayers. So in my mind, it should all stop and everything needs to just stand on its own. And while we're borrowing the money, I just don't feel comfortable with that at all. And so you know what my decision would be around this. So.
Councillor Pye.
Just very quickly, though, I do want to acknowledge and thank the council officers for bringing this to us, because that is what we have been asking for, so thank you.
Yeah, agree totally. Could I ask you, Stephen, if you could help us with a resolution that might...
You just need to resolve to leave it on the table. The only restriction on that is if you don't discuss it again before the end of the triennium, it expires.
I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Pye. Those for? Those against? Okay. So the resolution is passed. We have no matters of urgent or minor nature. There was no public forum, so I'm happy to close the meeting at 12:25. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
we'll box on. Kia ora, and welcome everyone to the Commercial Strategy Committee meeting. Today we have one apology, and that's the Mayor. He has given me some direction around some consideration of one of the items on here, which I will illuminate you with. I'll move that apology. Someone like to second it? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. All those in favour? Yes. Don't have any public forum today. I have not been made aware of any urgent or minor business. Is that correct? Thank you. Is there any conflicts of interest that anyone would like to raise? No. So we'll confirm the minutes on 6.1, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 18th of February. Someone like to move those? Thank you, Councillor Shannon and Councillor Booth. Awesome, thank you. All those in favour? Against, so moved, thank you. Going to the action, to my schedule of functions attending by myself, I'll move those. Anyone like to second that for me? Thank you, Councillor Parker. All those in favour? Against, so carried. So moving to 8.1 on page 16 is our action register. And the first one there being the management plan for the reserve of the Rangitata huts. The consultation process is underway, I understand. Any questions or information required around that? No? Okay, thank you. The chrome platers, don't think...
Sorry, Councillor, when does that finish?
Consultation?
Thank you.
Just interested in a timeline around that.
Mr Dixon?
Sorry, and through the chair.
We've given them until Easter because of when the Rangitata Huts Committee sort of meet is over that time. So.
No, that's good. But in the future, if we just have a time frame, because you read those things, be easier. Thanks.
Okay, very good. Update that. Chrome platers, and I see there that a meeting is to be put together around discussing that and bringing our local MP, James Meagher, into that. What's the timeline around that?
Thank you, and through the chair, councillors. So that meeting has been held, and we have his support to go forward with an application for the stage 4 funding at 100%. So I'm currently, and the rules have changed in regards to the application to the fund now, and as a council we are allowed to do our own application. So ECAN have handed that application now back to me. I'm in the process of finalising that at the moment from the draft that we had prepared, and we'll be putting that forward. I'm getting it peer reviewed by an independent just to make sure that I've not missed anything off there, because it's quite a technical report. And that will go in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's really down to the group with MB allowing the application to go forward. There may be some questions back and forth. I have already met with the new person who is now leading this fund within MB in Wellington, and he is fully supportive that he feels that a site includes building as well as land. So we're in a really good position here now to look at the entire building and land in one application. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds really good, thank you. And if we can get that 100% to be a big thing for us, our community, and also for our ratepayers not to have been strangled with that liability. Any more questions or any discussion on that? So our next one is the building consent numbers KPI. Someone like any questions? Follow up on that? Thank you. Okay, so that's the effectively our information on the actions register. So we'll receive and note that. I'll move that. Someone seconding. Thank you, Councillor Parker. All those in favour? Against? So carried. So moving to 8.2, bad debts written off in relation to our processes, and that's on page 19. And are we calling for any information in regard to that, and bearing in mind that we have PX in relation to that. No further questions or anything? Okay, I'll move that. Someone else like to second it? Thank you, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Against? So moved. We're moving through this. So there's no other considerations of urgent business or a minor nature, and so would someone like to move us into public forum? Thank you, Councillor Oliver and Councillor Pye. So, exclusion of public, that's what I should say. Thank you, and happy to second that, Councillor Pye. All those in favour? Against? So carried. Thank you.